There are moments in life when you realize just how long you've been keeping the peace at your own expense. For me, that moment came in the form of a wooden patio chair and a slap across the face. But I'm getting ahead to myself. My name is Alexis, and for most of my adult life, I've been the kind of person who smooths things over. The peacemaker. The one who keeps quiet, even when someone crosses the line, especially if that someone is family. I live in Dallas, where most of my extended family still gathers for holidays, birthdays, and barbecues in the backyard. My parents are retired and travel a lot, so most of the family events these days are hosted at my older brother Ethan's house. Ethan is great, steady, level-headed, always tried to look out for me growing up, but his wife Melanie, that's a different story. Melanie is intense, the kind of woman who thrives on control, appearance, and hierarchy. Everything with her is a competition. Who has the best clothes, the cleanest house, the most flattering compliments from the older relatives. And for reasons I've never fully understood, Melanie decided a long time ago that I was her target. Maybe it was because Ethan and I are close. Maybe it's because I never bought into her drama. Or maybe it's just because I refused to play along with her power games. Whatever the reason, she made it her mission to remind me, subtly and not so subtly, that I was beneath her. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday afternoon cookout. Ethan had invited the whole extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and a few family friends. The backyard was decked out in twinkle lights, folding tables, and the smell of grilled burgers. I brought my signature potato salad and a store-bought pie, because honestly, I didn't have the energy to cook from scratch after the week I'd had. When I arrived, I greeted everyone with hugs and smiles, even Melanie. She looked me up and down and gave me one of her signature greetings, that tight-lipped smile that somehow felt like a warning. "You look comfortable," she said. I smiled politely. "It's just a family party." Her eyes narrowed like I'd said something offensive. Sure. I brushed it off, like I always did, grabbed a drink, chatted with my cousins, and found an open seat on the back patio to rest my feet while the grill sizzled in the background. That's when it happened. The chair was nothing special, just a plain wooden patio chair with a plaid cushion, set near the garden where the breeze was nice. I sat down sipping lemonade, enjoying the rare moment of calm, and then I heard her. "Excuse me." Melanie's voice rang out across the patio, sharp as glass. "That's my chair." I looked up, blinking. "What?" "My chair," she repeated, slower this time. "I always sit there at family events." I stared at her, stunned. "Melanie, it's just a chair." Her eyes flashed. "It's my chair, move." People were turning their heads. The music had dipped. The energy shifted. I stood slowly. "Okay, sure, I didn't know." As I moved to get up, she added, loud enough for the whole party to hear, "And you could at least wipe it down before you leave your sweat all over it." I froze. My face burned. People were watching. Some awkwardly laughed. Others looked away. "Excuse me?" I asked. She stepped closer. "Clean it," she hissed, tossing a napkin toward me. That's when something snapped. "No," I said. "I'm not wiping down your chair, Melanie. Sit somewhere else." She blinked. And then, before I could react, she slapped me. Right there, in front of everyone. A full slap across the cheek. The patio went dead silent. And I stood there, stunned, cheek burning, heart pounding. Melanie straightened up, smug, as if she expected me to break down, cry, or run off in shame. But I didn't, because I had just crossed a line I never thought I would. I was done. Done being quiet. Done letting her humiliate me. Done protecting her image at the expense of my dignity. And for the first time in years, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You're going to regret that." And then I walked away, not to cry, not to hide, but to plan. Because no one slaps Alexis and walks away without consequences. Not anymore. After Melanie slapped me, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even touch my cheek. I just walked inside, grabbed my purse from the kitchen counter, and stepped outside through the front door. But I wasn't running away. I was letting her sit in her perfect little chair in front of all those people and wonder what I was going to do next. Because I wasn't going to fight fire with fire. I was going to fight with truth. And the truth, Melanie had a lot to lose. Back home, I paced my living room, the sting of her hand still buzzing faintly on my skin. Not from pain, but from the realization that I'd allowed her to treat me like this for years. Little jabs, snide remarks, humiliations whispered under her breath, all while smiling at everyone else like she was some perfect hostess. And I had let it slide, again and again. Why? Because she was family? Because I didn't want to cause drama? Because I thought keeping the peace mattered more than keeping my self-respect? No more. I sat down at my laptop and opened a folder I hadn't touched in months. A collection of messages, photos, screenshots, things I'd kept over the years but never dared to share. Until now. The next morning, my phone lit up with missed calls from Ethan. 12. Then came the texts. What happened yesterday? Mom's freaking out. Melanie told everyone you slapped her? Alexis, please call me. That was the moment I realized just how good she was at twisting the narrative. I took a breath, then replied, check your email. I had sent him a file, a single PDF, titled simply, You Need to Know. Inside were screenshots of messages Melanie had sent me, cruel, manipulative texts where she belittled my career, mocked my appearance, and called me names no family member should ever use. There were photos she had sent to group chats without my consent, mocking the way I looked at past events. There were even messages to mutual friends where she encouraged them to keep Alexis in her place. I had kept it all, just in case, and now was the case. It took Ethan 15 minutes to call me. When he did, his voice was shaking. Alexis, I didn't know. I didn't expect you to, I said. She's careful. She made sure to keep it just between us. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I don't need sorry, I said gently. I need you to stop pretending she's something she's not. He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, I believe you. Those 3 words, they were everything. That week, the family chat was different. Usually, it was filled with Melanie's constant updates, party planning, meal rotations, aesthetic suggestions for centerpieces no one asked for. Now, silence. And then, one by one, my cousins started messaging me privately. Are you okay? We saw what happened. She slapped you. Everyone knows it. Why would she lie? And then the most surprising one of all, Luke, a quiet cousin from my mom's side who rarely spoke at gatherings, sent me a message. She's treated a lot of people like garbage. You were just the first to stand up to her. I stared at his words. And then I smiled. Because standing up hadn't just freed me. It had rattled her cage. And the cracks in her perfect image were spreading fast. It's funny how one bold moment, one refusal to stay silent, can shift everything. After that weekend, it was like someone had pulled a thread on the sweater Melanie had been knitting around herself for years. The more people pulled, the more unraveled it got. Turns out I wasn't the only one. A few days after the slap, I got a message from Sabrina, one of Ethan's old college friends. We'd met at their wedding years ago and chatted at holidays, but we weren't exactly close. Still, her message made my hands shake. I'm not trying to stir the pot, but Melanie bullied me too. Years ago. I just didn't think anyone would believe me. She went on to describe how Melanie had sent her cruel messages after Ethan and Sabrina had hung out one-on-one after college, even though it was completely innocent. Melanie accused her of trying to steal her man and threatened to ruin her if she didn't stay away. That was years before Ethan and Melanie were even engaged. There was more. An older cousin, Joanne, who used to bring her daughter to family events, reached out too. I stopped coming because Melanie made me feel so unwelcome, always commenting on my daughter's clothes, our budget, how we lowered the tone of the party. And then Luke messaged again. I'm gay. I never told anyone because Melanie made jokes about turning the family rainbow and stuff like that. I stayed quiet. I hated myself for it. But when you stood up to her, it gave me courage. I had to put the phone down. It was overwhelming. But it was also validating. Melanie didn't just have a problem with me. She had a pattern. And now her spotlight was turning into a mirror. By the end of that week, Ethan called again. She's freaking out, he said. People are backing away. Mom's barely speaking to her. I didn't say anything. She says she wants to fix it. I let out a soft laugh. Does she want to fix it, or does she just hate the consequences? He paused. Probably both. Then let her sit with it, I said. I sat with her behavior for years. On Friday evening, my phone rang again. Melanie. For a moment, I stared at the screen. Then I picked up. Her voice was low, controlled, not apologetic, just tired. I didn't expect things to go like this, she said. I waited. I thought you'd move on, like always. There it was. The expectation. The assumption that I'd swallow the pain. Again. I'm not that woman anymore, I said. Silence. Then, is there anything I can say to make it better? I paused, not out of pity, not out of hesitation, but because I finally understood. There's nothing you can say, I replied. Only things you can choose to change, but I'm not the one who needs convincing anymore. She didn't argue. She just said, okay, and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel victory. I felt release, because I had let go of needing her to understand. And I had claimed something I didn't even realize I'd lost, my voice. A few weeks later, Ethan called again. There's another get-together, he said. Just the core family, backyard thing, nothing fancy. He hesitated. She'll be there. I let that sit for a moment, then asked, "Do you want me to come?" "I want you to do whatever makes you feel safe." It was a small sentence, but it meant the world. I told him I'd think about it. And I did. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to be sure I was walking in there for me, not for them. The day of the gathering, I wore something simple. A white blouse, jeans, and my favorite silver hoops. I pulled my hair back, looked at myself in the mirror, and smiled. I looked like myself, the version of me I had fought for. When I arrived, Ethan met me at the gate, gave me a hug that said more than words. "You look strong," he whispered. "I am," I said. The backyard looked the same. Tables, twinkle lights, the familiar scent of barbecue in the air. But the energy was different, warmer, lighter. Even a few of the aunts who had stayed quiet during the slap fiasco walked over and gave me soft, apologetic hugs. "I should have said something sooner," one murmured. "You're brave," said another. I didn't need their approval, but it was nice to know I wasn't invisible anymore. Then I saw her. Melanie. She was standing near the drinks table, wearing neutral tones for once. No sequins, no spotlight-seeking colors. Her eyes met mine. She didn't look smug. She looked small, not pitiful, just human. She walked over slowly, keeping her hands folded in front of her. "I won't make a scene," she said. I nodded. "Good. I'm still figuring out how to apologize." "Then start by not repeating the behavior," I replied calmly. "That's what matters." She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. Instead, she nodded once, then turned and walked away. It wasn't closure, but it was change, and I could live with that. Later that evening, I found myself sitting on the same patio from weeks ago, the same chair, only this time no one told me to move. I sat back, took a sip of sweet tea, and watched the sky turn gold as the sun dipped behind the fence. Luke sat beside me. "I'm glad you came," he said. "Me too." He looked over. "You think things will stay this way?" I smiled.